Speaking of casting a show, are you going to tell me it's your show? But are you going to tell the people
Allegedly.
that I'm one of the big stars over at Vice again this week with their new program featuring me on the YouTube?
That's right. You're probably confusing a lot of people because you are on so many of the different programs on Vice and Vice TV, but this was something that popped up and a lot of people in the last day have jumped on it on Twitter and on social media and of course on YouTube, but it's another Vice program, not necessarily actually not at all centered around wrestling, except this one episode is.
Yes, and it's called I Was There, and I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast here that we've shot some stuff for it, and they were going to tell me, I said, let me know when it's going to air so that I can promote it on our show, the exact date and premiere and whatever, and okay, and I heard like on Sunday, yeah, it comes up tomorrow. Oh, shit. Well, so it's already up there. It's already gotten, I believe, over 100,000 views, but if you go to YouTube, as so many of you do when you go to official Jim Cornette on YouTube, go to YouTube and search for Vice, I Was There. And it is a series they've done, YouTube exclusive series of different people that were in different places that made some type of history or and caused some notoriety. And they give their first person accounts. And then, of course, there's always B-roll. And fortunately, I had most of my own B-roll because I was the photographer at ringside, as we all know, for Lawler and Kaufman. And they shot the photos and some of my ephemera. And it's about, 12 minutes long. And just telling the story again. And they did a real nice job with the editing and everything. They made me sound learned and coherent. And so that is up now on YouTube. But we got to get everybody to watch this thing because I've got to beat the number of views the other episodes in the series. I got 6 cops indicted, and I was there when they dropped a bomb on Pittsburgh, and all the other episodes contain some level of violence and chaos and political strife and upheaval. It was nice to just sit down and tell a nice little story about a wrestling angle. But it's a cool series. You actually had some positive praise for it, oh young one.
Yeah, I thought it was really nice. I think the simplicity of it is what made it really good, and also the fact that it was accurate. The fact that you were there, you were saying things that were factual. They didn't use as much video footage. They were very careful about fair use with this thing. But they didn't use as much video footage as I thought they would.
Well, we know that the YouTube gods up there in wherever out in California, they're a little feisty about that kind of stuff.
But it was very well done, and it's one of those stories that people never get tired of, and it was nice hearing your perspective, and thankfully there were those photos. Really, I guess it's all about those photos of you emerging, whenever they did, of you photographing them as Kaufman was being stretchered out through the crowd. When was the first time you saw those photos? When was the first time you were aware of them?
I think it was, what is it now? The days blur these days, but 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it? When the Memphis newspaper did a retrospective on the match and the whole thing, and they printed their pic, because the only 2 photographers there was the local Memphis newspaper photographer and me. I knew I was shooting for, obviously the program, but also, after one of the pictures. And meanwhile, it was a local news story in Memphis. So the newspaper sent some. They didn't usually have anybody at ringside in Memphis. That was a special occasion as far as newspaper photographer. Every once in a while, they'd do a story if something big was going on. So the only way for anybody to have taken pictures of me being there is if there was another photographer, and all those years later, that popped up. And I even knew some of the people in the front row there that I was attempting not to trip over as they were bringing the stretcher by. So,
years ago when the tape was going around, like in the 90s, before everyone knew everything, and everyone knew that Juanita Wright, Sapphire, was a big fan and that she had attended fan things before she had been a manager of Dusty Rhodes as Sapphire. A lot of people thought Foxy was Sapphire.
I saw somebody on Twitter like day before yesterday said that. Well, that was Fox, or that was Sapphire. She was in the WWF. No, Foxy was Good old Foxy Jackson. I don't know what her given first Christian name was. That's what she identified herself with when she volunteered the first week out of the crowd. And what a great wrestling name, right? Foxy Jackson. But no, that was her one and only foray into the world of the two and only, the first match and the rematch. And then she faded back into obscurity.
2 follow-up questions for you. 1, do you think the word foxy is underused nowadays? Should it be brought back? And secondly...
Yes.
Well, hold on. And secondly, I brought up that Juanita Wright Sapphire was a wrestling fan years before she actually became a manager. Did you know her?
Somewhat. I had obviously, all the people who were in that circle would see each other's names in the fan club columns in the newsletters or even the magazines, like the Wrestling News. And then I'm gonna say that she was at least one of the WFIA, the fan conventions that I was at, and a couple of people had heard talk about her that I knew that went to St. Louis. I'm pretty sure Norman Dooley probably knew her, better than I did. But yeah, I was cognizant that she was a fan in St. Louis. And then when the Sapphire thing happened, I didn't at first because I didn't see Sapphire before I heard about it. I'm like, what the fuck? And then, I can't remember whether somebody told me it was her. I saw it was her on video first. That's been 35 years. I forgot to make notes on that. But that was just, that they knew her from, they'd been going to St. Louis. Obviously a bunch of the guys have been going there forever, but the WWF had been running since 84. That was one of the first markets. So she's smart to the business and she's got that personality. So I guess I don't know who pitched it. Sounds like a Pat Patterson to me.
Was the WFIA the greatest breeding ground for wrestling managers?
Well, when you think about it, the WFIA at that time was composed of between the people who actually went to the conventions and the people who joined and got the newsletters, maybe there was 150 legitimately smart fans that were smart to the business at that point in time in the whole country that weren't actually in the business. I'm not just talking about knowing that, they let each other win or whatever, that level of smart. I'm talking about actually knowing what the business was. That was probably all of them. And they all at one point joined that group in the 70s. And when you think about it, all those people were fans, so that means they weren't looking at getting into wrestling in an athletic capacity. Because you've seen some of the photos of the group, me included. It wasn't like goddamn breeding ground for the next, developmental circuit. But that's the way that people traditionally had, even before it was a tradition, gotten into the wrestling business in other capacities besides wrestling. The Grand Wizard, Abdullah Farouk. Before that, he was, Mr. Clean. He valeted for the Sheik in the late 60s, but he started as a TV announcer. And he was a hanger-on. Bobby Heenan. He was the guy that carried the ring jackets and washed Bruiser's car, but they were that level of dedicated inside fan that wanted to get closer to the business and stuck around or insinuated themselves, me included, until somebody realized, wait a minute, this isn't my next heavyweight champion, but this might be my next TV announcer, or my next manager, or my next booker, or my next referee, whatever the case. And so it made sense that a lot of the people that would become managers would have some, in the 80s, would have some involvement in the mid to late 70s with that fan organization, which was the only real group of smart fans. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And when you think of the managers that came out of it, you obviously, Dave Brzezinski became a manager.
Yeah, Supermouth Dave Drayson. Heyman was, I don't know if he was ever a card-carrying member, and he came on a little later, but he was of the same genre of person that would join the, and my God, Candy Devine.
Well, she became a wrestler. Well, and manager too.
She became a wrestler and manager, and of course Eddie Gilbert, but Eddie was involved in everything. Photographer, announcer, if he could, fucking fan club person, and wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps as a wrestler. But that generation.
The guy in the photo next to you, the photo of all the fans at the 1980 convention in Atlanta, and you have the Jerry Lawler shirt on?
Yes. Yeah, and that was Memphis in 79.
Oh, that was Memphis.
I wasn't wearing Lawler in 80.
Why wouldn't you be wearing Lawler in 80?
Because we were in Atlanta.
Right, but everyone was representing their favorite wrestler in the shirt. Like there was someone with a Backlund shirt there. Backlund wasn't there.
But the only reason I had a Lawler shirt with me is because we were in Memphis. I wouldn't have taken a Lawler shirt to fucking Atlanta, because then if I'd have had a shirt, I would have taken a fucking Freebird shirt. I don't know.
Well, you wouldn't have had a Freebird shirt in 79 or 80, but you would have had a Lawler shirt at that point in time. Who the hell was the guy with the Jumbo Tsuruta shirt?
God damn it. I'm trying to picture the picture.
And where did he get that in 1980 or 79? If it's 79, it's even more amazing.
Well, see, yes, but those were the fans who were getting the Japanese magazines. I was already taking pictures, and there was like, Walt Wolanski was getting the Japanese magazines in, and I'm pretty sure Walt's in that picture. It's got to be.
I believe so.
Either that or he didn't have a wrestling shirt.
I believe he is. Candy Devine's in that picture.
Yes. And she had her Leap and Lanny fan club. She was president of Leap and Lanny's fan club.
Oh.
But anyway, that was the group of people, all 12 of us, that were getting the Japanese magazines in the United States that weren't Japanese people in the United States in 1979. That was probably the whole group, and maybe a couple of guys in California. They sold them, I think, on some of the stands out in Los Angeles.
It's such a statement, just the idea of showing up to a fan convention. Everyone there is wearing the typical shirts, Dusty, Jerry Lawler. All of a sudden you show up with a Jumbo Tsuruta shirt. You're asking to be talked to.
Well, and I'll remember he was a veteran of the Amarillo circuit, so Eloise Mascaro would have known who he was probably, and there you go. And also, one of the most popular attendees at those conventions was I don't know how old she was, but probably a 70-something-year-old woman from Dallas that loved the Von Erichs. And
she's the reason everyone has those programs.
Yes. Where are you going to find today in modern times with this product of 70-something-year-old woman that's the fucking centerpiece of the fan convention?
Going back to the Vice I Was There special, did they interview you yet for the new one? I know they're talking to some other people. They just talked to Steven. About I Was There, Wrestling Disaster in Beckley?
Oh, hey, now, come on. That's actually going to be for Steven's YouTube channel that he's starting over there, The Baron of Beckley.
They'll do it for Stan, and Stan will just say, I wasn't there. It wasn't me.
That was Dennis. It wasn't me. All these years I've been laboring under a mistaken identity.